I'll never forget that quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind that feels almost too peaceful, like the calm before a storm. Sunlight filtered through the living room curtains, painting soft golden stripes across the floor. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, half listening to the faint sound of cartoons playing on the TV. That's when my stepdaughter, Emily, walked in. She's only 8 years old, always full of curiosity, her big brown eyes often revealing more than her words ever could. She didn't say anything at first. Instead, she climbed onto my lap with a serious look that made my heart skip a beat. Emily isn't usually shy, but she rarely acts so solemn. She gently rested her tiny hand on my chest, leaned closer, and whispered just 2 words into my ear. "Don't move." Her voice was so soft that I almost didn't catch it, but the urgency in her tone sent a shiver down my spine. I froze, my mind racing. What could possibly make her say something like that? Seconds stretched into what felt like minutes. I could hear my own heartbeat, heavy and loud, as I sat there trying to stay completely still. Emily's gaze darted nervously around the room, and she gripped my shirt a little tighter. I wanted to ask her what was wrong, but something in her eyes told me to stay quiet. In that moment, 1,000 thoughts ran through my mind. Was someone in the house? Had she seen something outside? Or was this all just an innocent game? It wasn't the first time Emily had surprised me. Ever since I married her mother 2 years ago, our bond had grown slowly, built on small moments of trust like this one. She'd never called me Dad, but in her own way she showed me she cared. And right then, sitting so close to her, I realized how deeply I cared too. How fiercely I wanted to protect her from whatever had made her so afraid. The living room seemed to hold its breath with us. The ticking clock on the wall sounded louder than ever. Outside, a car drove by, its engine fading into the distance. Emily's hands trembled just slightly, and I gently wrapped my arm around her, hoping to reassure her without breaking the spell of stillness she'd asked for. In those tense, silent moments, I tried to piece together what might have happened. Maybe she'd seen a shadow move outside the window. Maybe she heard a noise upstairs. Or maybe there was something she needed to say but didn't know how. The weight of her fear pressed down on me, and I realized this was about more than just a whisper. It was about trust, hers in me and mine in her. But before I could ask, before either of us could move or speak, something happened that changed everything. And that's when I realized that what Emily had seen, or thought she'd seen, was just the beginning. What she whispered next would leave me speechless and turn this quiet afternoon into something I'd never forget. Emily's breath felt warm against my neck as she stayed perfectly still. My mind was spinning, but I kept my voice calm when I finally whispered, "Emily, what is it?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, her eyes kept shifting toward the hallway that led to the back of the house. Her grip on my shirt tightened, and in a voice so quiet I could barely hear, she whispered, "He's here." I felt my stomach drop. The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. Who was he? We were supposed to be alone at home. Her mom had gone to visit her sister and wouldn't be back until later that evening. For a second I thought maybe Emily had imagined something, but the look on her face told me this was real to her. Real enough to make her small hands shake. I tried to stay calm for her sake. "Who's here, sweetheart?" I asked, barely moving my lips. She swallowed hard and leaned in closer, whispering so softly I almost couldn't catch it. "The man from my room." Her words were so unexpected that I had to fight the urge to turn my head and look her straight in the eye. Instead, I stayed still like she had asked, heart pounding. I didn't know what to think. Emily had never mentioned anyone like that before. Was this an imaginary friend? Or had someone actually been in her room? A dozen questions raced through my mind, and each one made me more uneasy. I thought back to the past few weeks. Had she been acting differently? Maybe she'd been quieter, a little more tired than usual, but nothing that had seemed this serious. Trying not to alarm her, I gently squeezed her hand and whispered back, "Where is he now?" Her eyes flickered again toward the hallway. "In the kitchen," she mouthed silently. My heart stopped for a beat. The kitchen was just around the corner, out of sight but close enough that if anyone was really there, we'd be in danger. The room felt colder all of a sudden, and every small noise seemed louder. The hum of the fridge, the faint creak of wood as the house settled. I strained my ears, listening for anything that didn't belong, but all I heard was silence. I thought about grabbing my phone and calling her mom or even the police, But Emily's words, "Don't move," kept me frozen. I didn't want to break her trust, not when she was this scared. As we sat there, I remembered small things Emily had said before. Little hints that now felt important. How she didn't like to sleep alone. How sometimes at night she thought someone was watching her. At the time I'd brushed it off as normal childhood fears. But now, sitting there with her shaking in my arms, I realized there might have been more to it. I thought about the old creaks and shadows in our house, about times I'd heard noises late at night but assumed it was just pipes or wind. What if Emily had seen something I hadn't? Or someone? The idea chilled me. Emily's breathing grew quicker, and her eyes widened, staring past me toward the hallway. My own pulse raced as I tried to steady her, whispering, "It's okay, I've got you." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure it was true. The fear in her eyes felt too real, too immediate. And just when I thought we couldn't sit still any longer, a faint sound came from the kitchen. A soft scrape like something being moved. Emily flinched, burying her face into my shoulder. My mind screamed to get up, to check, to do anything. But I stayed still, caught between fear and the need to protect her. In that moment I realized whatever was happening wasn't going to be simple to explain. Or to solve. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of something far bigger than I'd imagined. Emily's small body pressed tighter against mine as that quiet scraping sound echoed again from the kitchen. It was soft, almost careful, as if someone or something was trying not to be noticed. My chest tightened. I kept telling myself it could be something harmless, like the cat knocking over a spoon we'd left out. But we didn't have a cat. And Emily's fear felt too raw, too real to ignore. I wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but the words felt empty in my mouth. Instead, I kept my hand gently on her back, hoping she could feel my heart beating for her, steady and strong. Even if inside I was anything but calm. Every second that passed seemed to stretch into forever. The air between us heavy with unspoken questions. In that stillness, memories came flooding back. Little moments I hadn't paid enough attention to. The times Emily had woken up crying. The night she asked to leave the hallway light on. The way she sometimes paused at the kitchen doorway before stepping in. I'd always thought kids her age got scared easily. But what if she'd really seen someone? A new thought began to creep in, darker than anything before. What if it wasn't just a stranger in the kitchen? What if this man from her room was someone she'd seen more than once? Someone she knew? My stomach turned at the possibility. But before I could ask, the sound came again. A shuffle, closer this time, like footsteps on the tiles. Emily's eyes grew wider, her tiny fingers digging into my arm. I could almost hear her thoughts racing as fast as mine. And then in the middle of that tension, the doorbell rang. The sudden chime was so loud in the quiet house that Emily jumped, and my own heart skipped a beat. Neither of us moved. The doorbell rang again, longer this time, as if whoever was there was getting impatient. For a brief moment, I wondered if the person outside and the sound in the kitchen were connected. Or if this was something even stranger. Part of me thought about standing up, about finally breaking free from the fear holding us still. But Emily's earlier words, "Don't move," echoed in my mind. The ringing stopped, replaced by silence that felt almost heavier than the sound itself. I wondered who it could be. Her mother coming home early? A neighbor? Or someone we didn't want to meet? I didn't dare speak the question out loud. In that silence, my mind wandered to something Emily's mother had mentioned weeks ago. She'd said Emily sometimes talked in her sleep, mentioning a man in the hallway. We'd both laughed it off, saying it was probably just a bad dream. But now, sitting there with Emily shaking in my arms, I realized it might have been a warning we'd ignored. As the minutes dragged on, I noticed Emily's eyes weren't just scared, they were searching. It felt like she was waiting for me to do something, to protect her the way she clearly believed I could. And in that moment I realized how much she trusted me. Even if she didn't call me Dad. Then, almost as suddenly as it started, the noise from the kitchen stopped. No footsteps, no scraping. Nothing but the hum of the fridge and the ticking clock. But the silence didn't feel safe. If anything, it felt worse, like the calm right before something terrible. I held Emily closer, whispering, "It's going to be okay." Though part of me didn't believe it, I could sense we were standing at the edge of something bigger. Something hidden in the shadows of our own home. And in that quiet, I began to wonder if the real danger wasn't just what Emily saw, but what we both were about to discover. My breath felt heavy in my chest, and Emily's quiet trembling against me made every second feel sharper, more urgent. The silence after the doorbell stopped felt almost alive, like the house itself was holding its breath along with us. I strained my ears, desperate to hear something, anything, that would explain what was happening. But all I heard was the slow, steady ticking of the wall clock and the faint hum of the fridge. The calm felt wrong, too perfect, like the eye of a storm. Emily's wide eyes stayed fixed on the hallway, and I followed her gaze, half expecting to see someone step into view. My heart raced so fast it almost hurt, each beat echoing louder than the last. I thought about calling out, about letting whoever was there know we weren't alone, but something deep in my gut warned me to stay quiet. Then, as if to answer the question neither of us dared ask, a faint creak came from the kitchen doorway. My pulse thundered in my ears. The sound was small, like a single step, but it meant someone was there, just beyond where we could see. Emily's tiny hand gripped my arm so tight it almost hurt, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I tried to remind myself that maybe it was nothing. A neighbor who walked in by mistake, or the wind pushing something off the counter. But deep down I knew better. Emily wouldn't be this scared if it was something normal. Her fear felt too real, too heavy, as if it had been building long before this moment. Then through the tense silence Emily whispered, barely louder than her breath. "He's closer now." Her words sent a cold wave through me, and I felt sweat gather at my temples despite the chill in the air. My mind spun with questions. Who was this man? Why was he in our house? And why did Emily seem to know him, or at least know that he'd come for us? Every instinct in me screamed to get up and protect her, to face whoever it was. But Emily's earlier words, "Don't move," still held me back. There was a reason she'd said them, a reason that went beyond a child's fear. And I couldn't ignore that, no matter how much I wanted to. The house felt impossibly still until another sound cut through the quiet. A slow, deliberate drag, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. My mouth went dry. I thought about all the times I'd reassured Emily that nothing could hurt her here, in our home. Now those promises felt painfully empty. Emily pressed her head against my chest, her breathing fast and shallow. I gently put my hand on her hair, trying to calm her, but my own fear felt too strong to hide. Then in that breathless moment, I thought I saw a faint shadow move across the floor near the kitchen entrance. My eyes locked on it, waiting, every muscle in my body ready to react. But nothing appeared. Just emptiness, broken only by the quiet flicker of the TV screen. My mind raced through every possibility. Was this the same man from her room she'd spoken about in whispers at night? Had he been coming here again and again, waiting for the moment we were alone? Suddenly, Emily lifted her head, her eyes glassy with fear. "He's almost here," she whispered. Her words chilled me more than anything else so far. I felt the weight of them, the certainty that something was about to happen. In that frozen moment, with the hallway stretching out before us like a dark tunnel, I knew we were standing on the edge of something that could change everything. And whatever happened next, it felt like it had been waiting in the shadows all along. Just out of sight, ready to step into the light. My heart thudded so loud I was sure Emily could hear it. The words "he's almost here" echoed in my mind, thick with fear and certainty. I tightened my arm around her, every part of me bracing for the worst. But just as the silence grew unbearable, something unexpected happened that made the fear twist into something stranger, something I couldn't quite name. Emily's eyes, wide and shining with terror a moment ago, suddenly shifted. Her breathing slowed, her grip loosened, and she turned her head slightly toward me, not like she'd seen something in the hallway, but as if she was listening to something only she could hear. Her gaze unfocused, almost as if she were somewhere else entirely. I whispered her name, my voice trembling. "Emily." But she didn't respond. For a moment it felt like she wasn't really there with me anymore. Then just as suddenly her eyes snapped back to mine and she whispered, "He says you can't see him." The words sent a chill through me, sharper than before. My pulse roared in my ears as I tried to make sense of it. Who was he? And how could she be talking to him right now? Before I could ask, the front door handle rattled, breaking the tense stillness like glass shattering. My head snapped toward it, fear turning to raw panic. The door didn't open, but the handle kept shaking, slow and deliberate, as though whoever was outside knew exactly how to get inside, and was in no hurry. Emily's hand slipped into mine, small and cold. "He's angry," she whispered, her voice softer now, almost resigned. My throat tightened. "Who, Emily? Who is he?" I asked, but she only shook her head, tears filling her eyes. Then, in the middle of that fear, something else rose to the surface. Confusion mixed with dread. The man from her room wasn't just here to scare her. He wanted something. And somehow Emily knew what it was, even if she couldn't or wouldn't tell me. The door handle stopped rattling, replaced by an eerie quiet. I strained to hear any sound from the hallway or kitchen, but there was nothing. And then, breaking that silence again, the living room light flickered and went out, plunging us into near darkness except for the pale glow of the TV screen. Emily squeezed my hand, her voice trembling as she whispered, "He's closer now. He's almost in." My skin prickled with goosebumps and my thoughts raced. Whoever or whatever was coming wasn't using the door. It was already inside. Just then, from somewhere deeper in the house, maybe Emily's room, a faint knock echoed through the walls. Slow, steady, like a message meant only for her. Emily flinched, pressing closer to me. Her whisper cracked as she said, "He says you need to leave. But I can't." My chest tightened painfully. Leave? How could I leave her here alone? And why couldn't she come too? None of it made sense. The fear was no longer just about an intruder in the house. It felt bigger, older, like a secret that had been living in the shadows long before I became part of this family. Another knock came, louder this time, closer, as if it had moved from her room into the hallway. Emily's face grew pale, and tears slid silently down her cheeks. "Please," she whispered, "don't let him take me." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest, raw and desperate. The fear in her voice wasn't about someone breaking in. It was about being taken, pulled into something I couldn't see or fight. In that moment, I realized the danger wasn't just a stranger in the house. The real terror was something only Emily could see, and it was almost here. And as the knocking drew closer, each echo louder than the last, I knew this was far from over, and what came next would change everything. The knocking grew louder, each beat hammering into my chest until I thought my heart would burst. Emily's tiny hand clung to mine, her knuckles white, her breathing quick and shallow. I could see her lips moving silently like she was praying, or maybe pleading. My own fear threatened to drown me, but I forced myself to speak, my voice shaking. "Emily, look at me. We have to go." She shook her head so quickly it almost looked like a shiver. "He's here," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. And then, as if on cue, a shadow moved at the end of the hallway. Not a trick of the light, not my imagination. Something was there, just beyond the reach of the flickering TV glow. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but Emily's words kept me frozen. The shadow shifted again, taller than I expected, almost too tall, and it felt like it was looking right at us even though it had no face I could see. The air turned cold, heavy with something unseen but deeply felt. "Why can't you come?" I whispered to Emily, desperate. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Because he's part of me now." The words chilled me to the bone. Before I could ask what she meant, the shadow moved closer, almost gliding across the floor. I stood, lifting Emily into my arms, determined to protect her, even if I didn't understand what we were fighting. The knocking stopped, replaced by a new sound, a low whisper that seemed to slither through the air, curling around us. Emily clung to me, burying her face in my shoulder. "He says I have to choose," she sobbed. "One of us has to stay." My blood ran cold. "No," I whispered. "No one's staying. We're leaving together." But Emily's eyes, when she looked up at me, were filled with something deeper than fear, something like acceptance. Suddenly, the shadow lunged forward, filling the hallway, swallowing the weak light. Emily screamed and I stumbled back, shielding her as best I could. The darkness wrapped around us like smoke, cold and heavy, and for a terrifying moment, I couldn't see or hear anything but Emily's cries. Then just as quickly the darkness began to break. The TV flickered back to life, flooding the room with light. The shadow receded, pulling back toward the hallway, shrinking until it was nothing more than a dark stain in the air, and then gone. Emily gasped, her sobs turning into quiet, shaky breaths. I held her close, my heart pounding, relief crashing through me like a wave. Felt like it was over. I whispered to her over and over, It's okay. It's over. But just as I thought we were safe, Emily lifted her head, her eyes glassy but calm. He says thank you, she whispered softly. Confused, I asked. For what? Her answer made my blood freeze. For choosing to stay. Before I could understand, my vision blurred, and a crushing cold spread through my chest. My legs weakened, and I felt myself sinking to the floor, still holding Emily. As the darkness claimed my sight, the last thing I saw was Emily standing, her face pale but dry-eyed, watching me. Then it hit me. The choice hadn't been hers alone. I'd made it too when I stood my ground, refusing to run. And as the cold swallowed me completely, I realized too late. To save her, I had taken her place. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the TV, and Emily stood there, breathing slowly, her eyes fixed on the empty space where the shadow had been, where I now belonged. The cold darkness wrapped around me felt endless at first, as if I had slipped through some hidden doorway in our living room into a place where time didn't exist. But slowly a dim light returned, not bright or warm, just enough to see. I realized I could still see Emily, standing in the same spot, her small face pale but calm. Her eyes met mine, and in that quiet moment something passed between us. Something that felt like goodbye and thank you all at once. I wanted to speak, to tell her not to be afraid, that everything would be okay now. But my voice wouldn't come. Instead, a strange peace settled over me, as if the choice had already been made, and fighting it would only hurt her more. Emily wiped her tears away with the back of her hand, her shoulders no longer shaking with fear. The shadow that had filled our hallway was gone, and the air felt lighter, as though whatever had haunted her was finally satisfied. She stepped closer to where I had fallen, whispering softly, "It's okay now." Her voice didn't sound afraid anymore. It sounded like someone who understood something far older and darker than I ever could. Then slowly, she turned away and walked down the hall toward her room. Each small step seemed more certain, as if the weight she had carried for so long had finally lifted. And as she disappeared around the corner, the last thing I saw was her gently closing her bedroom door behind her. The room grew quiet again, the TV's faint glow dancing on the walls. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the hum of a car outside, ordinary life going on beyond the walls of our house. And for a moment, I realized that what had happened would stay between Emily and me. The world outside would never know. In that silence, memories of small moments replayed in my mind. The nights Emily asked me to leave the light on, the time she paused before going into the kitchen, and the whispered words she'd shared only with me. Each of those moments had been her way of asking for help, and though I hadn't fully understood then, in the end I had answered. The fear that had haunted our family had demanded a choice, and somehow both of us had chosen at the same time. Emily had chosen to trust me, and I had chosen to stay. And in doing so, whatever darkness had held her finally let her go. As the last traces of cold faded, I felt something like peace settle over me. Not victory or relief, but a quiet acceptance that this was how it had to end. Emily was safe now, free from the whispers and shadows that had followed her. That was enough. Outside, the afternoon sun began to break through the clouds, painting soft light across the living room floor. It felt almost like a promise that life would go on. Emily would wake up tomorrow to a quieter house, and though she might still remember, the fear would no longer own her. And so in the end, this strange story of a stepfather, a stepdaughter, and a shadow left behind something stronger than fear. A bond built not on words, but on love and sacrifice. A reminder that sometimes, protecting the ones we love means giving up more than we ever planned. That was the last thought that stayed with me before everything finally faded into stillness, leaving Emily to step forward into the light, free to live her life without looking back into the dark.